I would say connecting Yerushalayim and Brooklyn together on such an important week. We're just a week from the tragedy of Meron, which happened a week ago tonight here in Israel. I was on my way to Meron Thursday evening at this time. We were already getting up there. And next week on Monday is a day of celebration of Yom Yerushalayim, where my grandfather, my father's father, who was born in the old city and had to be and left. He actually left before 48 when he got married. He left to move to Ezor Nachlaot, Sharei Chesed, and he was in the Chativa Yerushalmit, which was the Jerusalem Brigade. I have a picture of my grandfather standing by the Kotel on Yom Yerushalayim. What is it now? 53 years ago. It's an amazing thing. And for me, I'm already seventh generation Yerushalmi. So to speak about, I understood from Jack that today's program is about Yom Yerushalayim, in preparing us during this lunch and learn for this big day. And really, I think this year it's something that's important to discuss because we had Lag BaOmer last week, with the very tragic events that took place there, that there's a lot of questions about. There is Yom Yerushalayim that is coming up and leading us to Chag HaShavuot. And I think all of these things really, they really come together. There's always a connection between Anshe Yerushalayim and Meron. My first haircut was by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai when I was 3 years old. My father took me up there. I remember when I was like 7, my younger brother, who was 3 years old, we went up there to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It wasn't as crowded back then, and there were always very good memories. And unfortunately, from this past year was very tragic memories. And maybe we'll try to touch on all of these things together. But I'll start with Yerushalayim. I want to start with something more positive, and then to move there. If anyone wants to, I understand this is a virtual lunch and learn, but it's also people are on the roads or whatever it is. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in. Yerushalayim is a very special city. Not long ago, I had the chance of hosting the Secretary of Treasury, Mnuchin. He came from the last presidency. He came to Israel, and we were hosting in our Eisha Torah Center overlooking the Kotel. It was a whole get together of the Secretary of Treasury with the top of the industry in Israel. It was the CEO of Waze, of Mobileye, of some top cybersecurity company, and he was coming to meet them, and the meetup was in our place, and I got a chance to take him out overlooking the Kotel, to our rooftop. If any one of you have ever been to Esha Torah, you're welcome to come again once the airport's open. And if you haven't been, I strongly recommend. You could just send me a WhatsApp. You tell Jack that you're coming and he'll connect us. You send me a WhatsApp that you're coming, and I'll take good care of you guys. It's the most beautiful view overlooking the Kotel HaMaravi. So I took him out there and I told him, I want you to close your eyes and to listen. Listen to Yerushalayim. Listen to Jerusalem. What do you hear? And it was that moment where in the background you could hear the Muslim muazzin, and you could hear church bells from the other side. And down at the Kotel, which is what we were overlooking, you hear it was yeshiva guys who were singing Am Yisrael Chai, or I don't remember if it was soldiers who were singing. It was a mix of many different sounds. And I told him, there's something special here. What are you picking up? So he's like, what are you referring to? I said, this is the only place in the entire world, there's no other city like this in the whole world, which is unique and special to all three religions, to Islam, to Christianity, and also to, obviously, for the Jews. We were the first ones here and everyone came after. But what's fascinating is that there's no other city like this in the whole entire world. For the Muslims, Mecca is a holy city, but it's it's not holy to Christianity and not to Judaism. And the Vatican, I don't know, is holy to Christianity, but not to Islam and not to Judaism. But our capital, Ira Bira, Yerushalayim, Ira Kodesh, is the only city in the whole world that everyone wants a piece of it. What's going on? And then he turns to me, he's like, so what's so special about this place? And that's really a question for us to think about when we're talking about Yom Yerushalayim, is what makes this city so special? That you sitting in Brooklyn, New York, or wherever we are around the world, we want to connect to this city. And the truth is that everyone wants to connect to the city. If you, I don't know the statistics, but if you take a top newspaper from around the world and you see how many times Israel is mentioned as opposed to any other place in the world, I'm assuming it's a very high percentage. Why? What's so special about it? So we have to understand the meaning of the word ir. Ir means city, and city comes from the word leorer. Leorer is air. Air is awakening. אני ער ראשון, ואז אני מתעורר. So the root word of the name city of Ir comes from the word awakening. It awakens something within us. By the way, historically, we know that it was the cities that awakened new ideas in society. In the farms is where you created the vegetation, but in the city is where technology expands, where you're moving forward, where we're advancing. That's where things awaken. So Yerushalayim awakens within us something. And I believe Yerushalayim awakens within us two things. Number one, it awakens within us a search for something that is very basic for every person, let alone every Yehudi. It's a search. It's an inner search that people who come to Yerushalayim, everyone is looking for the same thing. We're looking for meaning, for purpose. Why am I here? What do I bring to the world that nobody else brings? How do I bring that? What's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of life? This awakens within us when we come to Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. We come to the Kotel. You see people come for the first time. They go down to the Kotel. They want to touch the stones. They start crying. Why? Why is it awakening within us? What's so special about this city? Because we definitely know it's not a strategic location. It's not because it's by the beach. It's not the seaport that connects between different cities. It's up on the top of a mountain range. People are not coming there for natural resources. They're not coming there for a good view. They're coming there there's something different that it brings people there. And I believe that that's really the search for meaning and the search for purpose. And when I spoke to Secretary Mnuchin, I asked him, I said, well, do you know what the holiest room was in the holy temple? So he turns to me and he says, yeah, the Holy of Holies. I didn't know this, but Mnuchin is a Jew. I did not know this before he came. He said, wow, the Holy of Holies. So I said, well, what makes that room holier than any other room? Do you guys ever think about it? What makes Kodesh HaKodashim more kadosh than the rest of Bet HaMikdash? Right? What makes Kodesh HaKodashim kadosh? What makes that spot, that room more special? So what was inside Kodesh HaKodashim? What was inside of it? It was the Ark, Aron Brit Hashem. What was inside the Aron Brit Hashem? It was the Luchot HaBrit. What was so special about the Luchot HaBrit? The Luchot, people don't realize. Not only is it the only physical thing that connected between human beings and HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Hashem, but it is the core values of Judaism. And in a certain way, it's the core values of humanity. Now, these values are values of how one should behave, how one should act. Do not kill, do not steal, do not lie, do not covet. Honor your parents. Have a day of rest. We brought that to the world, a day of rest for humanity. Believe that we have a God, that we have a mission, that we have a purpose. Do not sway after your desires, after other gods. These are the core values, and people don't understand that is Kedusha in Yahadut. When you ask a normal person, can you draw me a picture of somebody who's holy? So who do we think? What do we draw? We draw Chacham Ovadia, someone with a long white beard. We draw maybe Baba Sali, he's wearing a Garabia, he's wearing white, right? Reb Chaim Kanievsky, or Lahavdil Elef Alfei Avdalot, will say, oh, a holy person, that's a monk in Tibet. It's a pope, right? These are all examples of people who are in a certain way removed from regular day-to-day life. They're removed from society. That's not Kedusha in Yahadut. In Judaism, we just had a few weeks ago Parashat Kedoshim. We believe this is our life's mission. This is the mission statement of the Jewish people, right? You guys run businesses. You know that a successful business needs to have a strong mission statement that everyone aligns to. What are we all about? Everyone in the company needs to know, what are we all about? In one sentence, what do we do? Can you say over what you do? If you could say it over in one sentence, what you do, you know you're a successful CEO because you're able to articulate that clearly to all of your employees. So what are we all about? What are the Jewish people all about? Right before we got the Torah, Hashem tells to Moshe to tell the Jewish people, "Ve'atem tiyu li mamlechet kohanim ve'goy kadosh." You will be for me a nation of priests and a holy people. And that is really our life mission. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Kedoshim tihiyu, you should be holy. Holiness doesn't mean that it's for people who are removed. Holiness are for you, it's for me. It means to live our lives with meaning, with purpose, with values, with God-given values that he gave us. He said, you have an opportunity to create a society, a kehillah, a community, a nation that will live based on these values in whatever they do. Business, real estate, accounting, whatever it might be. But you live it bikdusha, it means that you're living it with these values. And when you live it with these values, that's really what changes the whole world. That's how you create a kehillah in a society that stands for something. This is the core of what Yerushalayim is all about. The reason why everyone flocks to Yerushalayim is because everyone, doesn't matter what religion they're from, doesn't matter what race they're from, what gender they're from, everyone is looking for meaning. Everyone is looking for purpose. They just don't know where to find it. They don't know how to do it. And Yerushalayim, Am Yisrael, we have the answer. And that's really through the Aseret HaDibrot. And that's really the connection of Yerushalayim and Shavuot. It's connected, but I'll share with you that it's even more powerful in Yerushalayim than it is on Shavuot. They're connected because the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 commandments that we got on Chag HaShavuot, they make it all the way to Yerushalayim. And that is the holiness, and we're supposed to live by it. That Torah that we got makes it to Yerushalayim. That's what makes it special. But in Yerushalayim, it's even more special. How do I know? Because I ask you, where is Har Sinai today? Have you ever been to Har Sinai? Have you ever seen it? I don't know if any of you have been on a tour in Midbar Sinai, in the Sinai desert. You could get a tour guide. He'll take you on a Jeep trip, and he'll tell you this mountain over there is Har Sinai. We don't know. Maybe yes, maybe not. I don't know. He's going to try to sell you, I'll show you Har Sinai. But we don't really know where Har Sinai is. Yerushalayim, though, Bet HaMikdash, Har HaBayit, we know exactly where it is. Why? What's the difference? How come? And even more so, Har Sinai, the Kedusha of it was the peak. If you touch the mountain, you were Chayav Mitah. Whereas Bet HaMikdash, of course, you have to go on, be Kedusha and this, but you're allowed to go on the mountain. Har Sinai, you were not allowed to go on the mountain. And yet, when the Kedusha is finished, when Har Sinai is finished, there's no more Kedusha, but Har HaBayit, there's still Kedusha. We still come to there today. What's the difference? My father said a great mashal to me. He said a person goes, bracha achona. A person drinks a cup of water. What's the after bracha that we say? We say, borei nefashot, rabot v'chasona. Very short bracha. We say quickly, we mumble it. We almost don't say it. If we eat cake or shivat aminim, what's the bracha achona? What do we say? Bracha achat men shalosh. Ala michya, ala kalkala. It's a little bit longer. And if you eat bread, so then what's the bracha achona? We bench. Birkat Hamazon. Some of us have benchophobia. You guys know benchophobia? You don't want to wash because you don't want to have to bench. It's a benchophobia. Okay. But when we do wash, we bench shalosh brachot, arba brachot. Why is it that for bread we say a long bracha, but for a cup of water we say a quick borei nefashot? Why not? What's more important? What sustains us? What gives us more life? A cup of water, you can't go 3 days. Person's finished. So what's so important? Why bread? Why does that get the biggest bracha and water gets a short bracha? The answer is like this. If I go up to the Golan Heights and I go on a trip, I have fresh spring waters. I have a cup or a bottle, I can fill up the spring, I can make a shakol, and I make a bracha. The food that I'm intaking, the water that I'm drinking, is directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. However, when it comes to lechem, to bread, what grows, it's true, it rains, and the grains grow, and the farmer is involved, but that's not enough. You have to harvest it. You have to crush it. You have to turn it into flour. You have to mix in water. It takes the whole sidura de pat of Shabbat in order to make a piece of bread. We become partners with Hashem. That is the difference. The more we, me and you, are partners with Hashem in bringing Kedusha into something, the more Kadosh it is, and the Kedusha lasts. The Jews in Har Sinai and Shavuot, they did not do anything to bring the Kedusha down. What did they do the night before? They went to sleep. That's why we stay up, Tikkun Leil Shavuot, because they went to sleep. We were not partners in bringing the Kedusha down, and therefore, after Har Sinai, the Kedusha left. However, Yerushalayim, we were partners in building it. David HaMelech, Avraham Avinu, Akedat Yitzchak. David HaMelech has to fight for it. He has to get it. He has to buy it. The whole thing. The Kedusha remains because we were involved in building Yerushalayim, in capturing Yerushalayim, in building Bet HaMikdash, even when Bet HaMikdash is destroyed. The Kedusha remains. Kedusha Rishona, Kedusha of Bet HaMikdash, says the Rambam, Kitcha leSha'ata veKitcha le'atid lavo. The Kedusha of Har HaBayit always remains. Why? Because we are partners with Hashem. So Yerushalayim represents the connection of Shavuot to Yerushalayim, the values, the Kedusha, living a holy life. That is our life's mission. And it only stays with us if we become partners with Hashem. What does it mean to be a partner? It means a partner that you're supporting, that you're trying harder, that you're learning yourself. You could hear a great shiur. You could hear a great shiur from a great Talmid Chacham. After a day, how much of it do we remember? After a week, how much of it do we remember? After a month, I remember that it was good. That's all I remember. I don't even remember what he said. But if you learn one sugiyah for a half hour and you have to break your head on it, you became a partner, you'll see that Kedusha stays inside of you. You remember it better. It affects who you are much more than being passive and receiving something. Yerushalayim charges us to work extra hard, to push it together. That's the first thing that Yerushalayim awakens within us. It awakens within us the search for meaning, and the search for meaning is found in the holiness of the values that we are supposed to live, embody, and be partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to bring it into the world. The second thing that Yerushalayim brings within us is Yerushalayim is called Ir Shechubra La Yachdav, a city of unity, a city of connection. I want to suggest that the feeling we had in Yerushalayim, there's only one time a year that we could still feel it, a little bit of it, here in Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara in Pesachim tells us on Daf Samech Daled, the Gemara says that Tana me'olam lo nimach adam ba'azara. It was so crowded in Yerushalayim. And the Gemara gives it like a number. They counted how many Korban Pesach was brought, and they times it times 10 because there was at least 10 people. We're talking about over 1 million people. According to some calculations, 12 million people on the mountain. You can't imagine. How could it be? It was so tight. And the Gemara says, Omdim tzfufim, on Yom Kippurim, they used to stand so tight together, but there was some sort of miraculous nace when they bowed down, there was more room. It was so tight that if you lifted your legs up, you would just move with the crowds, with the masses that are walking in or walking out. And yet, shift after shift of Korban Pesach, says the Gemara, Me'olam lo nimach adam ba'azara, a person was never crushed in the Azara. 420 years of Bayit Sheni, never did a person die because he was crushed to death. But then says the Gemara, besides one Pesach, it got so crowded in the days of Hillel HaZaken, and there was one old man that got crushed to death. And they called it Pesach Me'uchin, Pesach of the people who got crushed. I don't know why, but the only holiday that has a little bit of the feeling of that unity, that it doesn't matter where you're from, Sfaradi, Ashkenazi, Marokkai, Hasidi, Litai, Mitnaged, it didn't matter, Dati Leumi, everyone comes to Meron, which seems like a side holiday. And not only do they come to Meron together, they squish together, they dance together, they daven and cry together, songs of yearning and connection. You don't find this in any other holiday throughout the Jewish calendar anywhere else in the Jewish world. I don't know why. But now, after this year of Meron, I think this is the only place where it really exists. Even when you go to Birkat Kohanim in the Kotel, you have 10, maybe 40,000 people there. Number one, they're not dancing together. It's just a different, I don't know if you've ever been there. Here we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. Usually over a course of 24 hours, they have between 400 to 500,000 Jews coming to this small mountaintop. And somehow miraculously, for over 100 years, no one has ever gotten injured. And it gets crowded. I remember going there as a kid. It gets crowded. It's crowded. It's unbelievable. It's crowded and it's unbelievable. And we're singing and we're dancing and we're crying and we're praying. And we spend 3 to 4 hours traveling, something that would normally take an hour and a half. And then we spend, an hour or 2 or 3 up there. And then we spend hours going back. And that's part of the Chavaya of Lag BaOmer in Eretz Yisrael. And unfortunately, this year, it became Lag BaOmer Me'uchin. Lag BaOmer of those who were crushed, those who were stepped on. This holiday is the holiday of Achdut. Yerushalayim is the city that represents unity. It was never divided into Shvatim, into different tribes. It's the place of Ir Shechubala Yachdav, that we are connected, we are united. And this year we got a big wake-up call. There was a wake-up call a year ago with COVID-19. There's a wake-up call a year ago with riots in New York and across the United States. There's a wake-up call now when it's starting to be finished here in Eretz Yisrael, that a day of unity became a day which is the exact opposite of unity. Because Jews that were dancing together and loving together and excited to be together. And by the way, in Meron, everyone feels like this is their place. No one feels out of place. Everyone comes, it says, it's the Hadlaka of Bian, of Toldot Aaron, but everyone is there. They're just in charge and facilitating it. But that day of unity turned into a day where we literally stepped on one another. Of course, unintentionally. But we physically killed one another. And that's something for us to stop and think about. Because if we're talking about Yom Yerushalayim as a day that awakens within us feelings like is me'orer, the feelings of meaning and purpose, it also awakens the feeling of the yearning for unity, achdut, and connection that crosses all of the Shvatim of Am Yisrael. And the fact that leading up to it was a day where we stepped on one another tells us maybe we speak about achdut, but maybe we also step on one another. Maybe we step on another Jew who's somewhat different than us, who thinks somewhat differently than us, who dresses differently than us, who's not from our kehillah, who's not from our this. And this is really a wake-up call for us if we want to get to Shavuot. Shavuot is all about Ke'ish echad belev echad. We have to be one people, one heart, one feeling. And it's got to be real. It can't be fake anymore. That's what this is about. It cannot be fake anymore. If we really love another Jew, it's not loving him just because he's like me and he's my friend and he thinks like me. It's somebody who even thinks differently than me. Because if we want to see the Geulah, and these are the days of Geulah, these are the days of Yemot HaMashiach, but it's up to us. It doesn't happen miraculously, and it doesn't happen to us. We make it happen. We make it happen with how much we're connected to these values, by how much we connect to the message of what Yom Yerushalayim is all about. This is what these days are all about, of seeing the good in another Jew, seeing the positivity. You want to come prepared for Shavuot. We know that Sfirat HaOmer splits into two. You have 49 days. You have the first 32 is Gematria Lev. Lev is heart. The last 17 days is Tov. Starts the first day is Lag BaOmer. It starts the first of the Tov days, the 17 days. And it's all about doing good for one another. And I want to leave you with a challenge that until Shavuot, for the next 12 days, next 10 days, every day you find another Jew and you give him a compliment. You give a compliment, something that's genuine. It could be your wife, it could be your kids, it could be your friend, it could be someone, but you find a Jew and you make sure that if a 24-hour period passed, I better give a compliment to somebody else. I like your shirt. Thank you for helping me out in shul. I really appreciate what you did for me. We need to start training ourselves and our children to give compliments to other Jews that are different than us. To see the good. In order to give a compliment, you have to see the good in another Jew. If we start seeing the good in another Jew, that is the Lev Tov. That's the good heart. That brings us closer. That brings us closer to one another, and that awakens within us the Ir Shechubra La Yachdav, the unity, the partnership. The last week taught us something. It's that Hashem is speaking to us. We don't have nevuah nowadays. HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to us nowadays through world history. For me, it was very hard on a personal level. I knew some people. My chavruta lost his nephew. One of the Rabbis in my son's cheder himself was nifter. Being there on the mountain and then leaving and hearing what happened the following morning shook me to the core. Took me 3-4 days to get back to myself after speaking it out with a lot of people, going to levayot. The country's in trauma, but we are the Am HaYehudi. We know how to get back up. We know how to get back up from our own mistakes. We know how to get back up when others attack us. It's much harder when it's our own mistake. Much harder. But we know how to grow from it. We know how to be Ishel Re'eu Yomar Chazak. We know how to strengthen one another. We know how to be mitchazek. We know this gives me chizuk. This gives me chizuk, the ability. When Jack told me, let's connect Yerushalayim and Brooklyn, I said, this is what we need. This is what we need to connect, that our neshamot feel one another, that we connect, that you guys feel Yerushalayim a little bit. I'm sorry, I'm not overlooking the Kotel right now. I wish I could be broadcasting from there, but I hope I could welcome you in person. And this is really what Am Yisrael needs. We need to connect with one another. We need to feel one another. Yirtzeh Hashem, we will complement one another and make that a practical thing that we could take away from us, take away from this short shiur. And Bezrat Hashem, this will awaken with us. Like we said, the word ir means le'orer. It awakens within us. Yerushalayim awakens within us the search for meaning, for values, for a holy life, to create that holy society, that holy community that you guys are creating. But it also awakens within us the ability to unite, to connect, to be one. May we be zocheh b'mera b'yameinu, that all of the Keilah Kedosha, you guys will come to us, to Yerushalayim, you will come to Eretz Yisrael, kulam b'yachad, ke'ish echad, belev echad, we'll be mekabel et Torah, we'll rejoice b'mera b'yameinu, b'Mashiach tzidkenu. Amen. Thank you so much.